newstalkzb.co.nz.
It's Leighton Smith.
And I'm just reading an email from a neighbour of mine that I want to try and include if I can, because it's something that I was unaware of. But let me raise the question of the convention centre.
Yeah.
And also I want to talk about John Banks to you. This convention centre has caused you a great deal of grief to this particular point. Agreed?
Well, it's certainly be subject to quite a bit of debate, although a very delayed debate, because we had the press conference and made the announcements well and truly before the election. So funnily enough, actually, I thought that's when the major debate would occur, and it didn't at all. And it has now, a year or so on, because Labour and the Greens have decided to cut up rough. But if you just take a step back, since 2003, we've been arguing and saying Auckland needs a major convention centre. And when I came in as the incoming Minister of Tourism in 2008, they said to me, build more infrastructure. If you want to take the lumps out of tourism, you want to take the peaks and troughs away, build a convention centre and other infrastructure. We put money into a feasibility study. They basically came back and said, if you build a convention centre, it'll add about 160,000 visitor nights. They spend a lot more than the average person that comes, and it'll be great for the wider economy. Plane flights, hotels, cafes, you know.
All that.
Okay, fine. So we wandered along and said, well, what are our options? In the end, 5 people showed an interest through the expression of interest process. 4 of them said, happy to build it for you, but you got to pay the lot. SkyCity said, here's a deal where we get more pokie machines, some other minor changes to our licence, length of the licence, in return for no cash injection.
Okay, so it was a trade-off.
Absolutely. And we've been quite upfront about that. So everybody said at the time, pre the election and all of it, including Labour, good for jobs, good on you. Now they're trying to change the argument and say, it's about problem gambling. Well, firstly, let's acknowledge, A, there are problem gamblers in this country. There are, and we do our very best to give them support, but there are problem gamblers. Are they worse in casinos than everywhere else? Well, there's no evidence to support that. In fact, harm minimisation is better in a casino, arguably, than other parts of the sector. Secondly, even if you got rid of every pokie machine in New Zealand, people would be internet gambling, and they already are. In fact, I was talking to one of the heads of one of the banks who was telling me, you should see the credit cards, they're internet banking in a big way. Third thing is that there were 25,000, if not a bit more, pokie machines in this country in 2005. There's a sinking lid policy, which means that when you're changing licences, they get taken out. There are 18,000 now. There'll be 493 less at the end of the year. So SkyCity are going to get less than 493.
Okay, so let me deal with that.
So why wouldn't we have it? I mean,
okay. Look. Here's the other side of the coin, that the opposition parties have picked up on it and caused you some grief. They seem to have, as best I can tell, the majority of the voting population backing them, in that trading off policy with an international organisation, a company, trading off policy for a deal is selling the country short.
Well, that's nonsense.
And hang on, but this is what people believe. So are you getting so you're not getting the message across, because the numbers indicate that people don't support you on this, rightly or wrongly. That's the way that I understand that it is. Therefore, you will be punished for it at some stage, maybe at an election, unless you can swing people around.
Well, firstly, I'm not sure I accept that. So there's been a number of different polls, and if you dig down into the polls, about a third of people say yes, we want it, about a third of people say no, we don't want it, and the bulk in the middle say, well, our preference would be not to have more pokie machines, but if that means we're going to get it, might accept it. And the point being that those group in the middle are being fed misinformation, which is there'll be more pokie machines. In fact, there'll be less. They'll be in different locations.
But again, to wrap this up, I say the government is giving the impression it can be bought.
No, that's not right. What happens, though, is there are lots of industries where the government has to change the law to effect change. So Fonterra, all those farmers out there at the moment, are going through a law change called the Dairy Industry Restructuring Act, simply because they are governed by law. Well, that's because they're a monopoly, and they're governed that way under the Dairy Act. It's also true for casinos. So we are unashamedly wanting to change and give them some different conditions, in return for a large amount of jobs that will be created, a large amount of income that will be created for the Auckland region. And my view is, yes, you can debate that trade-off, but do we want the 900 jobs to create it, the 800 jobs to run it, the 160,000 visitor nights, the better restaurants, hotels that come from it? My view, yes.